Gun Owners Radio. We make activism easy. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for listening to Gun Owners Radio. Go to our website, gunownersradio.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please, if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, whatever social media you follow us on. Make sure you go and hit that little like button so that stand up and be counted. Sign up for our email, and most of all, tell your friends. Let everybody know that you listen. Have them go to their social media and follow us, especially on Facebook, or excuse me, on YouTube, both. So go to gunownersradio.com, and thank you for ignoring. I hear there's some kind of sporting event today, and you decided to be here with us for Gun Owners Radio. I appreciate it.
All right, Gun Owners Radio is broadcasting from our new home here at Discount Gun Mart, here at DGM. Check out DGM in San Diego on Marina, and also out in Santee by Gillespie Field off the 67. Just look up gunmart.com or discountgunmart.com for more info.
Discountgunmart.com. Those guys are awesome. Thank you so much for giving us our new blue and black checkered home.
That's it.
Okay.
All right.
What we got next?
Next up, we got the gun truth of the week.
Gun truth of the week. So most people know 1994 as the year I graduated from high school. But there was also a study published that year that showed that in the previous 12 months, 503,481 incidents occurred in which an armed victim, while in their home, came across a burglar. And in 98.8% of those cases, the burglar fled due to being confronted by the firearm. 98.8. So 503,000 plus in 1 year, a burglar tried to burgle somebody's house, and it was an armed homeowner, and just because they had a firearm, they didn't even have to pull the trigger. The burglar decided to flee at 98.8%. So if you want to scare off a burglar 98.8% of the time, you should be a gun owner. And that is your gun truth of the week.
By the way, did the math. A couple things. One, 1994, I was just born.
Aw.
No, I'm just kidding.
Just born.
Right. So I think this is even more impressive.
Okay.
98.8%. Absolutely fantastic rate statistics, right?
Right.
503,481 incidents.
Yeah.
That means 502,474 of them, the bad guy left. That's 502,474,000 cases where our victim was safe.
And that's such a specific thing. 500,000 times in 1 year in this one specific instance when there was an armed homeowner and a burglar tried to, break in or did break in, and they were presented with a gun. That's a lot for such a specific case and in such a short time period.
It's pretty impressive.
I think the official scientific term for 98.8 is just about all the time. I think that's how you phrase that. Just about all the time when somebody breaks into the house and they find an armed homeowner. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, you have Q's, we have A's. This is the Q&A section of the show. Here's some of the questions that I received this week. First, can out-of-state people apply for a California CCW? So we talked last week about how there was a case. It was CRPA and Second Amendment Foundation who sued the LA sheriff, and the judge said, yep, you got to submit a procedure in order for people who live outside of California to get their CCW. I've actually already helped somebody, and notified the San Diego Sheriff's Department, and it was somebody who had a California CCW, and they moved out of state. Now they're trying to renew. At first they were denied and said, hey, the law says we can't do this, but boom, now the law says we can. Here, the only thing is the decision said 90 days. So we're like maybe 10 days into that 90 days. So yes, they will be able to. But they need to wait until about April. And then what you'll start seeing is on the sheriff's websites that issue CCWs, they're going to start showing procedures basically. So you can, the quick answer is you can, but not yet. But it's coming.
Very soon.
Yeah. Okay. And this was, Alicia, why don't you read this next question?
All right. Next question. Someone I know is trying to get their CCW Does a DUI felony that's 46 years old follow you forever?
So it's a good question. And really, we don't have enough information to completely and totally answer that question. There's like 15 questions I'd like to ask this person, but let's just deal with the information that we have. They said that it basically doesn't matter if it's a DUI or whatever kind of felony it is. This person's indicating that they became a felon 46 years ago, and there's no indicator that they did anything to reverse that felony. So we have to assume by this question that they're still a felon. So they're asking, hey, can a felon get a CCW? And again, it doesn't matter what the felony is from. Here they said it was a DUI felony. But basically, if you're a felon, you're a felon. So you can't get a CCW. More importantly, you can't get a gun.
Right.
So I'm not sure, I'm not sure all the circumstances, but if a person wants a CCW and they have a felony on their record, the first hurdle is that they won't even be able to own or purchase a firearm in order to, necessitate a CCW.
Does it matter the variety or flavor of the felony?
No, it's either you're a felony or not. Now, there are some misdemeanors, some non-felony offenses where you also lose your gun rights,
right? Which
I am completely against. I think that's just absolutely ludicrous. In fact, there's some felony convictions that I don't think you should lose your gun rights, to be honest with you. But that's a whole other subject. Anything you want to add? Because that was somebody that came from you.
That was a question. Yes, correct. That was something that the one question or thought that I had. This was a question that was asked by a friend of mine, but it was kind of one of those things where it was a friend of a friend of a friend.
Yeah.
And I just was wondering, I'm like, as this comes through that telephone channel, right, from one person to the next, was it truly a felony?
Yeah.
Right. Not all some can be, absolutely, but some are not. And so that's one question I had first is it truly a felony, or are you just assuming that it was?
I used to think to myself, if you're a felon, you know it.
You would think so.
But honestly, I've since met some people who were felons, and they didn't really realize it. They didn't know it. They didn't know if they could vote or not, or if they could own a gun or not. They just didn't, To
be honest, my dad was one of those. I was helping my dad with some paperwork, and had he have had a felony conviction, it would have disqualified him from some different programs that I was trying to help to get him in. It wasn't until we pulled his record that we found out everything was, he was arrested for things that should have been a felony. However, things were pled, things happened in court, his convictions were all misdemeanors.
Oh, wow.
He didn't know it.
Well, and
so you never know.
I'll tell you this: it is possible to get rid of a felony. You can get that reversed. It's near impossible.
It's not easy.
And I'll tell you this: if you did take the steps to get rid of a felony, so that you were no longer a felon, you would remember.
That's true.
So there's nobody out there that is a felon and took whatever steps. There's a couple different, Hail Marys that you can throw to not be a felon anymore. There's nobody out there that was a felon, took those steps, and didn't remember or doesn't know if they're not a felon or not. I really doubt that. So there you go. So that's the answer for that. Next is actually a comment, kind of a question. We talked about in last week's show, or maybe it's 2 weeks ago, showed a bunch of bar charts that had to do with the last election. How did Republicans do? How did Democrats actually do? How many people actually voted? That sort of thing. And I thought it was pretty interesting. But there was a comment on our YouTube channel from a guy named All About Survival. He said, interesting breakdown, but skeptics. What happened here? Here it is. But skepticism about election integrity isn't just about bar graphs. It's about the broader concerns over mail-in ballots, ballot harvesting, and lack of transparency in key areas. 100% agree. All About Survival. Excellent comment. And if I didn't emphasize that, hey, look, it's still crucial that you're involved in the voting process, that you, do whatever you can to volunteer in the voting process, that you take steps to make sure that your ballot is counted and secure during the voting process, whatever you need to do. I mean, that's absolutely the responsibility of a person who is voting in the country of the self-governed. I wholeheartedly agree. I don't really think that, there's the last few years, there's been a lot of talk of, there's been this widespread voter fraud. I don't think there has been. And we've had experts on the show to talk about it who've agreed that there really hasn't been. However, do I think that if a politician could get away with it, they would? I absolutely do. I absolutely know that if they could figure out some, dishonest loophole or whatever, some kind of way to get away and win, they absolutely would. The many of the politicians that I've met, many of their campaign staff, it's winning is number one. It isn't improving your life or changing public policy or helping the children or whatever. That's not what their priority is. Their priority is winning. So I firmly believe that people, if they could figure out kind of a foolproof plan to cheat and win, they would. I have no faith in the scruples of many politicos and those types of people. I just don't see that there's any solid proof that there was widespread voter fraud in the way that most people describe. Does that mean that I'm not saying there was no voter fraud, but I don't think there was enough voter fraud in any election to turn the tide. It just doesn't appear to be the case. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be vigilant. So thank you, All About Survival. Appreciate that comment. I really wanted to make sure people heard that because I really, really liked it and agree with it. Super chat, Mike White just sent us $10. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for your donation. Thank you for listening. Awesome job, Mike White. Appreciate you very, 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 very much. Okay, there you go. What's next?
So next up, we have our legal and legislative segment where we tell you what you need to know from the courts and the legislators. Remember, neither Mike nor I are lawyers. We are not here to give you legal advice, and all legal advice should come from a properly licensed California lawyer. Our sponsor, John Dillon, is a lawyer. John has been helping more and more people to fight GVROs. Those are gun violence restraining orders. If you or someone you know has had their self-defense rights taken away without due process, give John a call. His website is dillonlawgp.com, and his phone number is 760-642-7150.
We try to tell you in this section a little bit about everything you need to know when it has to do with the courts or laws, that sort of thing, and just give you a little taste. We don't go into a deep dive on a lot of these, but we want you to know generally what's going on. Especially I try to pick things that are going on that really, truly affect your life. So, are suppressors dangerous tools that need to be regulated or simply hearing protection? The Fifth Circuit Court doesn't agree with gun owners. So what's the problem? Well, there's an FFL named PDW Solutions, in Louisiana, and they were raided by the ATF, and state law enforcement actually was with them as well. And the reason for the raid is they did a couple of things illegal, or at least allegedly. They sold a pistol and then didn't report it. They have to report sales, and they sold this pistol and didn't report it. PDW Solutions, he also failed to report a transaction that he made to an undercover cop who told him he was prohibited. So undercover law enforcement went in and said, hey, I can't legally buy a gun, and he sold him a gun anyway, and didn't report that transaction either. So they decided, hey, we need to raid this guy. He's breaking laws. He's selling guns without going through the proper reporting. And after someone told him that he was prohibited, they still sold him a gun. He was also conducting business from his home, but on his license, he said he was only going to conduct business at gun shows and at a storage unit and not at his home. So he was doing a couple of things wrong. And they searched him, and they found unserialized, unregistered suppressors that he made himself. So I got to tell you, people really need to be aware. This is how this happens. It's very, very common in law enforcement that they find you doing something else. That's why police officers pull you over for, going a couple of miles over the speed limit, because they want to be able to see, hey, is this person actually doing anything bigger than that? Or are they acting suspicious or whatever? Can I find something else that they're doing that's bigger than that? So they find these little things, and then that leads to big things, And that's how that's how this stuff grows. So I know a lot of people that would come up with like the assault weapons ban. People would say here in California, well, I'm not gonna make my assault weapon, quote unquote, comply with California law, and it's just gonna sit there in the safe, and I'm never gonna take it to the range, so I don't have to worry. I can't tell you how many people get hung up on not complying with some gun law, and it started with something that had absolutely nothing to do with guns. So anyway, that's what happened. Okay, so what happened? PDW Solutions sued because he believes the Second Amendment protects suppressor ownership. The judge disagreed because a firearm can fire without a suppressor. So basically, it's not a crucial part for a firearm to function. So we've seen, like in our case, the Miller case, we've seen in a couple other cases where basically they say, hey, look, for example, the magazine ban case. Oh, what is that one again? Yeah, I don't remember. Anyway, they say, look, it's a crucial part. Like magazines can't be banned because it's a crucial part of the firearm functioning. Mm-hmm. And this judge is saying, hey, look, in these other decisions, it says that if it's a crucial part of the firearm, then it's protected, and a suppressor is not a crucial part. You can't fire a suppressor without a gun, but you can fire a gun without a suppressor. So what's next? This could actually go a lot of ways. It's nowhere near done, but a decision from a normally friendly circuit that says suppressors are not protected by the Second Amendment, well, that's not good. Some things can't be solved with a lawsuit either. So in other words, this may never get solved in the courts, but this decision on the books by, like I said, a friendly circuit is not that's not a step forward. There are definitely a lot of horrible gun laws, not just handgun laws, but gun laws out there that will not be found unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. That doesn't mean I don't think they're unconstitutional. I think they're unconstitutional. But what I'm saying is the courts there are a lot of horrible gun laws out there that they will not find unconstitutional. And that's where we got to go back to elections. We got to make sure we get the right people elected. You're not going to be able, there's no silver bullet. We're not going to win this thing one way. The lawsuits are crucial, and organizations like FPC that are filing and fighting in the courts, absolutely crucial, but we can't just rely on them. We have to do the actual activism and get the right people elected. So that's what's happening right now. It's not going to affect you in any way yet, but I wanted you to be aware that the Fifth Circuit, specifically out of Louisiana, they said, hey, you know what? Suppressors, not protected by the Second Amendment. Is Trump about to get rid of every gun law with one executive order? Well, let's talk about it and see exactly what he did. So it's no secret that there are way too many laws on the books regulating firearms. And here in California, we tend to focus on just the California laws. And we think it's all about the state, and there are hundreds of horrible gun laws. But the federal government has actually gotten pretty bad too. Nowhere near as bad as the state of California, but it's increased its badness in the last few years. So thanks to Clinton and Obama specifically, and the Biden administration, they've actually increased federal gun regulations, and it's not good. So federal gun laws have increased since basically the 90s. The big one was the assault weapons ban that started in the early 90s under Clinton. And then, of course, no thanks to the Bush administrations. The Bush administrations, the Bush Senior and Bush Junior, didn't really do a whole lot to help us. Didn't do much of anything to help us. The assault weapons ban sunsetted under the younger Bush, but they didn't really do anything. They didn't really help us in any way. There's really been no fight back from the executive branch until now. So I've long said that Trump is the best Second Amendment president that we've had in a century, maybe more than a century. That doesn't mean he's perfect. It just means that he's better than the last dozen or so presidents, 24 presidents. And yes, that includes Reagan. Reagan didn't particularly do anything helpful when it came to Second Amendment. Now, he was endorsed by the NRA. He wasn't horrible, but he wasn't great. It wasn't great. In fact, when he was governor, he did some real harm. But Trump's actually doing something significant in his first, 2 weeks of being president. So he issued an executive order that on February 7th that is specific to the Second Amendment. And I wanted to talk about it and talk about exactly what we can maybe expect and some of the problems, some of the positives. Okay, so it reads, by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1, purpose. The Second Amendment is an indispensable safeguard of security and liberty. Powerful words right off the bat. It's preserved the right of the American people to protect ourselves, our families, and our freedoms since the founding of our great nation. Because it is foundational to maintaining all other rights held by Americans, the right to keep and bear arms must not be infringed. Again, powerful purpose. Section 2 is the plan of action. Within 30 days of the date of this order, the Attorney General shall examine all orders, regulations, guidance, plans, international agreements, and all other actions of executive departments and agencies to assess any ongoing infringements of the Second Amendment rights of our citizens and present a proposed plan of action to the President through the Domestic Policy Advisor to protect the Second Amendment rights. Okay, real important. These are all, what he's saying is everything. We want to look at everything the executive branch can do. He didn't say anything about laws. He said orders, regulations, guidance, plans, international agreements. Those are all executive branch. You know, he's not a legislator. It's not the legislative branch. So, it's a little bit smaller scope than just looking at the entire picture of the United States and seeing, hey, what are we going to just overcome? In developing such proposed plan of action, the Attorney General shall review at a minimum. So this isn't, he's not limiting that scope. He's actually saying, hey, this is the minimum, but you can go above and beyond. All presidential and agencies' actions from January 2021 through January 2025. So basically he's looking at the Biden administration, because the Biden administration did do some anti-gun stuff, and they did it real quick once he got elected. So let's see, rules promulgated by the Department of Justice, including by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives from January 2021 through January 2025, pertaining to firearms and our federal firearms licensees. Agencies' plans, orders, and actions regarding the so-called enhanced regulatory enforcement policy. So that's an exact quote from the Biden administration. They did enhanced regulatory enforcement policy. And this is pertaining to firearms and or federal firearms licensees.
This next one I'm excited about.
Okay. The next one, here, go ahead, read it.
Reports and related documents issued by the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention.
Yeah, there's nothing that came out of that White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention that should live. Yep. All of that should be gotten rid of. Every single bit of that should be gotten rid of. It was about a year and a half ago they put it into place, and then one of the first things that he did is he got rid of it. The positions taken by the United States in any and all ongoing potential litigation, that affects or could affect the ability of Americans to exercise their Second Amendment rights, agencies' classifications of firearms, and ammunition. Let's see, processing of applications to make, manufacture, transfer, or export firearms. Okay, so basically they're looking at everything, again, related to the executive branch. What did Biden do? What has already been done that needs to get undone, which is very, very good news. Implementation. Upon submission of the proposed plan of action described in Section 2 of this order, the Attorney General shall work with domestic policy advisors to finalize the plan. So they're going to come up with a plan. They're going to say, hey, this is all the stuff that needs to get undone. Here's the plan to undo it. And then it talks about how, nothing that we're going to do is going to exceed our authority. It's not going to, be budget related or whatever, basically keeping Congress out of it. Although there's no real reason that they can't say, hey, here's some of the things that we recommend from the executive branch that the legislative branch can do. In other words, there's no reason they can't say, oh, by the way, one of the things we think that should happen to support the Second Amendment is they get rid of XYZ law or whatever. So is this good? It's outstanding. It's great. I love to see a president for, I don't know, first time ever I've ever seen an executive order that was directly related to the Second Amendment. I can't think of any other examples. I think it's extremely important when somebody stands up and says, "Hey, the Second Amendment's important, and we're gonna evaluate everything in our purview, our scope, and try to undo the bad." So absolutely, that part's good, and it could be really, really good. But it's probably not going to be everything we need. People are just like have this attitude of like, "Hey, Trump's going to undo everything, and everything's going to be right with the world." I don't know. I don't know about that. Not only that, but this is under the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. I don't really, she doesn't really get me all excited when it comes to Second Amendment. She's had some really bad decisions in the past when it comes to Second Amendment. I don't think she's going to be working on this directly. She's going to get somebody to work on it. And that is something that does get me excited. They recently announced that there's an attorney working for Trump, and his name's David Warrington. He is part of White House counsel. I think he's probably going to be heavily involved in this. I would hope that he's very heavily involved with this. And this guy, look him up, David Warrington, David Allen Warrington. He is an American lawyer who is the current White House counsel. Just got appointed here in January, a couple of weeks ago, and he is outstanding. He actually worked for the Ron Paul campaign for a while, and he is a absolutely legit pro-Second Amendment guy. He knows what he's talking about. He's fought for it in the past. So I think there's a lot of things to look forward to. But I've spent so much time around elected officials and heard so many promises and seen so many initiatives. Don't get your hopes too far up. This thing could be a big nothing burger. I'm glad he had the executive order. That's something we can hang our hat on. But the rest of it, show me. I'm not going to hang my hat on anything else. Let's see what happens. But there's a lot to be excited about. So that's the Trump executive order. Okay, did a judge just make it legal for everyone to have a machine gun? There's more to this story, and some parts of it you'd never, ever guess. So what happened? Well, the case is USA versus Justin Bryce Brown. Justin Brown possessed a machine gun. He's the plaintiff in the case. That's it. That's all he did. He possessed it. In fact, the decision even said, quote, "It criminalizes the mere possession of such weapons without regard to how the possessor uses them." So it wasn't the act of buying one. It wasn't the act of making one. It wasn't commerce. This was strictly possession. He possessed a machine gun. So the case is only about a law that makes the possession of a machine gun illegal. And it's an interesting case, but I got to tell you, there's a lot of ins and outs. Like I said, normally we like to touch on things, and just kind of give you a taste. This is one where I highly recommend you go to the Four Boxes Diner with Mark Smith. Just look that up on YouTube, and we'll put the link in the description. And spend the 15, 20 minutes listening to Mark Smith, because there's a lot of ins and outs and what have yous in this. The judge ruled that, hey, this person shouldn't be guilty, shouldn't face any kind of criminal charges by merely possessing a machine gun. But this judge is also fairly anti-Second Amendment. It was almost a snarkily written judgment. And I got to tell you, this thing is so narrow and focused. I'm not sure how much this thing's going to help us. So can you legally possess your own machine gun because it is considered an arm? The case does say you cannot ban arms, which is true, unless they can figure out how to make the arm be considered, quote unquote, dangerous and unusual. And frankly, the definition of dangerous and unusual is a bit of a moving target. And it varies, depends on who you're talking about. Just the concept of dangerous. Are guns dangerous? My gun's not dangerous. It's very safe to fire and use.
You know what's very dangerous?
What's that?
Mandolin slicer.
Well, what?
A mandolin slicer.
What is a mandolin slicer?
It's a kitchen tool that you slice vegetables and things with.
That sounds unusual, too.
Dangerous.
So, okay, so can you legally possess your own machine gun because it's considered an arm now because of this decision? If you do it in Mississippi, where this case originated, and if you get busted by the ATF, I don't know about state, but if you get busted by the ATF and they only charge you with possession of a machine gun and you spend the money on a lawyer and you make it to Judge Reeves, he's the judge that wrote the opinion, and he decides he still wants to rule the same way and there's no appeal, then the answer is probably. But does this decision help anyone in the entire rest of the nation? No. And if you listen to Mark Smith, he basically says that we should kind of turn around and walk away from this, that it's not a good decision. You know, it's kind of like people, when it comes to lawsuits, when it comes to judges and courts and decisions, that sort of thing, it's kind of like when you were a kid and you're asking mom and dad permission for something. You know, it doesn't really act that way. It's not like you're saying, hey, courts, can I have permission to do this? And then whatever the court says goes, and it's crystal clear. And, you know, like, yeah, you can go spend the night at little Johnny's house, you know. It's much more complicated than that. And on the other hand, it's actually a little bit like that. Like, let's say you do want to go spend the night at little Johnny's house, and you say, hey, mom and dad, can I go spend the night at little Johnny's house? And they say, yeah, you can go spend the night at little Johnny's house. Okay, does that mean that you can spend the night at little Johnny's house tomorrow night too, and next week, and whatever you want? You know, and you can go over to little Johnny's house without ever having to ask them permission again? No, they mean in this very narrow situation. Tonight, when you're asking, hey, can I go spend the night at little Johnny's house? Can I do that tonight? Yes, they only mean tonight in this circumstance. What if I wanted to spend the night at another kid? His name also happens to be Johnny. No, that's not what they meant. So it's that same way with the court. They really, really kind of parse this thing out. It has to be exact. It's very, very intricate. And anyway, listen to Mark Smith. He does a really good job on this. It's worth the listen. You know, I think a lot of the times there's maybe a little too many details out there, and I try to just boil it down to what you need to know. But in this case, I think you should listen to Mark Smith. So, yeah. Is our guest on the line? Okay. Okay, there you go. So that's all you need to know this week. That's our legal and legislative segment. I think we're going to move on to our next guest, which I'm very excited about. Okay, there is a new sheriff in town up in Idaho, and he's somebody we know here in San Diego, Sheriff Ballas. He was elected in November 2024, and he was sworn into office in January 2025. Ballas served in the infantry field for the United States Marine Corps for 11 years. After serving in the Marines, Ballas earned his bachelor's and master's of science degrees in Homeland Security and Emergency Management from National University in San Diego, California. He is currently a doctoral candidate pursuing his PhD in emergency management through Capella University. Ballas has a special interest in studying K-12 targeted violence and working toward evidence-based prevention and response strategies. Before his election, Ballas was a patrol officer for the Haley Police Department on special assignment, school resource officer with the Blaine County School District. Ballas served as the president of the Idaho Association, school resource officer from 2022 to 2024. He was also a board member of San Diego County Gun Owners a few years ago until he moved to the beautiful state of Idaho in Blaine County. So we're going to talk to him. But first, this segment is sponsored by Cargo, Cases and Rugged Gear Outfitters in El Cajon. Go to cargostores.com. They're on 423 Broadway in El Cajon. If you need to protect your gear while you're on the go, look no further. Cargo has the perfect case for you. So if you need it protected and you want it customized, Cargo is the place to go. Use code GOR for 10% off on their website or mention Gun Owners Radio at the store and you'll get 10% off. Great products, great prices, and uncommonly good service. Cases and Rugged Gear Outfitters. Sheriff, how are you, sir?
Mike, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good, man. It's good to see you. I'm so congratulations on your recent election and all your success and your beautiful family and everything you've done.
All glory to God. We're just happy to do His work and be His hands on the feet on the ground and do great work here in Blaine County.
That's awesome. Now, like I said, you used to be on the board of San Diego County Gun Owners. You were a very active member of San Diego County Gun Owners, and we were, mixed emotions when you went to Blaine County, Idaho, but you moved your family up to the beautiful state of Idaho. And then the next thing I know, you're sheriff. It was like you moved into town, and then I'm like, what? What happened? Which is fantastic news. I think they made a great decision. But talk a little bit about what it was like moving from San Diego to Idaho, and what got you into the sheriff's race.
Yeah, so my wife and I are originally from Tucson, Arizona. We called California home after I left the Marines, as most service members do. And honestly, we were looking at Tennessee or Texas. And I came out here to visit my brother who lives in Boise in July of 2020. And I told my wife, I said, hey, we got to put Idaho on the short list. Her old principal, who was a principal there in San Marcos, had moved up a couple years prior. And she reached out to a principal and she said, you know what, not only will you love it up here, but I actually have a perfect job for you. My wife's a literacy coach, so she really specializes in supporting teachers and coaching literacy and helping students. And it was about a 3-week span between the initial interview and our decision to move. And then about a year and a half later, I was doing consulting work with a lot of schools across the U.S., some down there in the San Diego area on school safety. Started to work with our school district here, got to know the school resource officer at the middle school. And she said, hey, we got a high school SRO position becoming open here shortly. And I thought, man, this is such a unique opportunity to work from the inside out. Anyone that does consulting knows that you're there to provide recommendations. You're not there to actually see the follow through. And so there was a lot of prayer that went into it. And we said, look, we're going to step away from the consulting and go in as a patrol officer, got hired and became the school resource officer. Just an amazing, amazing experience. Got to do a lot of great work, create a model for what evidence-based programs can look like. And then fast forward almost 2 years later, and the opportunity to become sheriff came up. And again, a lot of prayer.
What was the catalyst? What made you run? I mean, I was so happy to hear it. Our whole point, San Diego County Gun Owners, is local elected. And I don't think, had you ever thought about running for office before, or what made you decide?
Never, not at all. And the long story short is my wife was 20 weeks pregnant. This was in February, actually right about this time. We went in for a 20-week checkup, and our son, we didn't know he was our son at that time, but Tucker, he had extreme anemia. So he had the human parvovirus is something that's very common, but very rare when it comes to pregnancy to transfer to the baby. And so we were kind of struck by lightning on that, and we got the worst case scenario of that virus. And he was extremely anemic, and our doctor said, look, you guys need to get to Salt Lake. He wouldn't give us any more information than that. And so we ended up the next day down in Salt Lake. And what happened is that there's laws here in Idaho that are very restrictive when it comes to abortion, specifically medically necessary abortion. More or less, the mom has to be bleeding out on her deathbed before they'll take any action. And so we went to Utah. Within that 24 hours, the entire situation had changed. He had gotten even worse than he was 24 hours prior, and just had to make a decision at that moment, knowing that if we came back to Idaho, my wife's life was at risk. The likelihood of that pregnancy was already extremely rare for it to continue. And we ended up, our son returned to God that day. We always say that he was just a little too perfect for this earth. And that was on February 23rd of last year. And then about a week later, I'd never thought about running for sheriff. Elected office wasn't in my wheelhouse. I'd been a cop all of 2 years at that time. And I had some very influential people in the community approach me and say, hey, have you ever thought about running for sheriff? And being a faith-based family and at that time very in touch with the spirit, I knew there was something more to those conversations, that it wasn't just this random thing. I felt like God was calling me to really explore this. And so I did some research, looked into what gaps were there with the current sheriff, what opportunities were there for our community. And about 2 weeks later, I announced my candidacy by March 15th. So I think on March 13th or 14th, I submitted the paperwork. And so it was something that was literally a week or two decision that our family had to make.
First, I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Very, very sad to hear that. I'm very sorry. That's interesting that it's part of that was part of the calculus for you to run for office, and I'd imagine that was a lot of deep thought and conversation, and you and your wife probably had to talk a lot about that. When you did make the decision to run, like what were some of the things? First off, were you running against an incumbent, or was it going to be an open seat?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the current sheriff had been a law enforcement officer for 33 years. He was going into his third term here as sheriff. We are kind of an anomaly here in Idaho. Our Blaine County is what most people would say is the only blue county in Idaho. Really what it is we got a population of about 25,000 residents, 15,000 registered voters, and it's honestly a pretty equal split. We have a third Democrat, a third Republican, and a third what we call unaffiliated or independent voters. Those unaffiliated overwhelmingly vote blue. And so the incumbent sheriff was a Democrat. I myself had been a lifelong Republican. I switched over to unaffiliated in 2022. And so when it came time for the election, I'm coming off of this, our family is coming off of this, losing our son and having to go out of state to get an abortion. And those laws were put into place by Republicans in our state that just don't understand all the medical nuances when it comes to a medically necessary abortion. So it was a very raw, difficult time for me and my wife. And so I switched from unaffiliated to Democrat, like literally right when I did my candidacy, like right before.
Yeah, I saw that.
And
I saw
so-
that you ran as a Democrat. I didn't know what you were before. It just doesn't come up. It's San Diego County Gun Owners Radio. It doesn't really come up. We don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green. It doesn't come up. We're totally nonpartisan. So it hadn't been anything that we talked about before. But I saw that you ran as a Democrat. I saw that Blaine County. I was looking at some of the stats here. And Blaine County is a very blue, very Democrat county in the middle of a very red state, fairly red state. And I didn't know that was part of the decision making. But you're as pro-gun as any person on the planet. You're as pro-Second Amendment as anybody I've ever met. There's no wiggle room. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, like I said, you served on San Diego County Gun Owners Board. I personally worked with you a number of times. On a lot of different things, and you're not you're maybe the most pro Second Amendment Democrat I've ever met. What was that like though? Running in, how did that come up? How did that being pro Second Amendment, running for sheriff in a blue county in a red state, like how did that affect the race?
I mean, it was a huge part of the primary race. There was a lot of questions about, was I truly a Democrat? What were my purposes? What was I doing? Was I just kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing? Was it just an opportunity thing? And the truth is it really came down to that single issue and that experience that we had just been through. I'm a very critical thinker. I'm the type of person that wants to see the data, being evidence based, extremely empathetic and towards people's situation, but also looking at what the reality is. And so I was never a hardcore, I'm only going to vote party lines. I'm only going to make decisions based off of the letter that's at the end of my name. Those things were never me, but it came up a lot. And here's what you have to understand about Idaho is even though we are in a blue county, this is Idaho. This is a Second Amendment state. The Democrats, they carry guns. They're pro-hunting, pro-Second Amendment. Of course, you have individuals that are more traditional Democrat when it comes to the Second Amendment, but overwhelmingly, we're in a community that supports the rights to own guns, and everything that comes along with it. What was interesting, though, was in the primary, because I did have a Republican, or I'm sorry, in the general election, there was a Republican running as well. And, they tried to attack me on being anti-Second Amendment, or I'm going to try to take guns. And it was just laughable. Honestly, it was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, it's Blaine County is very rural. It's a resort town, my understanding. I guess it's like ski resorts.
Yeah, it's one of the number one ski resorts in the world, actually.
And was there a one or two like big issues that were like really mattered in this race? I mean, people, Second Amendment is always kind of like a secondary issue, and people ask about it. Was there some kind of big thing that you guys were fighting over? I know you were a school resource officer and you were coming into the race. Was there some kind of big issue that was really the center of the race?
So here's what's interesting is that there was no issues at the sheriff's office. Our sheriff's office is phenomenal. It wasn't like there was any scandals. It wasn't like, the deputies on the ground weren't doing a good job or anything like that. Really, the two main things that I ran on and that the community was really asking for when I was doing my research is that the sheriff at the time, they didn't feel like he was well connected to the community. There wasn't a direct line of communication. He wasn't available. They didn't feel like he was as present as he should be. And again, we're a county of 25,000 residents. It's everybody knows everybody, right?
Yeah, I would imagine 25,000 is yeah.
And then my main campaign was running on prevention-based policing versus just response. Right, we tend in the law enforcement community to focus on how quick we can respond, what equipment do we need, what training do we need, and those are all extremely important. My mindset is that our end goal of law enforcement is less crime, and so our true goal should be how do we respond less, and we have to look at the underlying issues that drive crime, which are overwhelmingly substance use and mental health issues. And that's the community that I was tapped into as a school resource officer, working with different partners on how do we address those issues. And that's what I'm doing as sheriff, is looking at how do we address those underlying issues to actually take less people to jail and send less people to the ER.
So it's a county of what you said, 25,000. So so there's a sheriff's department, and there are also some police departments within the county as well.
Yeah, we have three municipal police departments. We have Sun Valley PD, Haley PD, and then Bellevue Marshall.
And you were working for one of the PDs as a school resource officer.
Yeah, I was with Haley Police Department.
So what prepared you as a school, PD, and working with the schools? What helped prepare you? Like what advantage did you have working that you brought to the sheriff's department? You know what I mean? How did that prepare you?
Yeah. Well, first is all the community organizations that I was connected with. So a lot of mental health, suicide prevention organizations, just a lot of things that are on the peripherals of what we do as law enforcement. So I was a representative of Haley Police Department, a lot of times speaking as the school resource officer. But really, in a community this small, our high school has 1,000 students in it, and so as the school resource officer, in just the high school alone, my exposure to those students and by proxy their parents and the teachers that work at the school and all the other schools that I worked with, I think is what really made the entire situation so unique. Being in a small community. I quite honestly had just as much, maybe more name recognition than the sheriff himself because of that connectedness to the community.
Yeah, because you've been all those. I'd imagine being pro Second Amendment. It's not just like, hey, it's not just a box you check. You've been a part of organizations. You were an instructor here. You did a lot to help with the activism part of Second Amendment and all that other, all the stuff that you did here in San Diego was based around firearms. what was it like being, having that Second Amendment, that pro-Second Amendment activism background, being vocal about it, being a central point of your life, and working at a school? Did that ever cause any friction? Was there something that maybe, something you had to fight for or against because of it, or how did that work?
Yeah, so last year there was a bill that came up in the House, and it was a allowing guns in school bill. And essentially it was, if you're an educator and we're a constitutional carry state, but if you got your CCW, you were allowed to carry in your school. You didn't have to, there was no ongoing training requirement. There was nothing of that nature. Now, in Idaho, school boards already have the authority to allow their teachers to carry. They can come up with their own program. So we had about 10 school districts in the state that had come up with these very good comprehensive plans with their local law enforcement on what initial and ongoing training look like, right? And there's a lot of nuances and things when you're considering countering an active shooter threat at a school. And so the Idaho Association of School Resource Officers and myself, we actually came out against this bill. And the main reason that we came out against this bill is because it would have stripped away the school board's ability to actually come up with comprehensive programs that we know are needed to be successful. So what we asked was a bill that actually mandated schools to create a program for their staff to be able to carry on school grounds. Right now, it's up in there. They can choose to, they can choose not to. So our compromise was, look, we see the importance of this, but we also don't want to take away the good things that other school districts have done. There's some response considerations that this bill just isn't really doing. So we want to mandate schools to do this and let us help you build those programs successfully. At the end of the day, it passed the House, the original bill, and then it got held in committee in the Senate. But that bill comes up almost every year, so I expect to see it again.
Wow. Okay, so was this specifically just for teachers, or was it anybody, like students, or not students, but parents or whatever, or just CCW holders? Was it all encompassing, or was it really specifically addressing whether teachers could or couldn't carry when they were on the job?
Yeah, it was essentially teachers and volunteers. What's interesting, though, is the state code doesn't provide an exemption for off-duty law enforcement to carry on school grounds. It actually specifically says law enforcement while doing their official duty. So that was one thing that we highlighted, was like, you're not even technically, by the law, you don't even allow off-duty LE to conceal carry on campus. And so there was just some things that they just kind of missed the mark on it. The NRA was a big sponsor of this bill, and my stance the entire time, they were pushing this as a Second Amendment bill. I viewed it very much as a school safety bill, and the main reason for that is kind of to your point, is that if this was truly about the Second Amendment, then you wouldn't have any limitations. You would say the right to carry and protect kids is everybody's right. But they didn't go that route. They said, hey, just employees, and we're going to take away the power from the school districts. And
so conceptually, you are okay with trained teachers carrying for protection when they're on the job. You just didn't like the procedures and wanted to make sure that school boards retained the power that they had over that program. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's primary it. And look, at my academic background and a lot of my professional background is specifically active shooter phenomenon in schools. And there is no doubt in my mind, the evidence overwhelmingly supports that having equal or greater means to counter the threat, having a firearm plays a significant, or can play a significant role in reducing the number of victims associated with those attacks and ending those attacks quicker. There's no doubt in my mind that the empirical evidence, emergent research all support that.
Interesting. There's one thing I definitely want to talk a lot about here. You live in a rural area, and you were telling me when we were talking yesterday that it is uniquely uniquely to rural areas, especially resort areas, you were saying has an unusually high suicide rate, and that one of the things that you are working on and tackling and organizing to prevent is suicide, and specifically with a firearm, but any kind of suicide. Talk a little bit about that, because I think the idea of Second Amendment activists, people that really truly believe in their soul, that the Second Amendment is important, working on suicide issues is an important issue, but it's kind of a tightrope to walk sometimes, because the anti-gun folks have embraced it and used it against us so many times that we don't know what to do, And it sounds like you guys are working on a really interesting program. You want to talk a little bit about that? Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so this phenomenon of mountain resort communities, so Aspen, Vail, Sun Valley, where we live, experiencing extremely higher rates of suicide than other areas is a real thing. And here in Idaho specifically, we have the highest rate of suicide in the entire state here in Blaine County. And there's a lot of kind of ideas or assumptions around that. A lot of it has to do with people come to communities like this because of the isolation and all the outdoor opportunities. But also that same environment creates some challenges. There's times when we can have snow on the ground 6-7 months out of the year, and it kind of creates this level of depression. There's also a big party culture that goes along with resort ski communities. And so it's kind of like these real high highs and these real low lows as people start to get into alcohol and maybe other type of drugs. And so it's a very common phenomenon within these resorts. And one thing that we've looked at is, and this is no surprise to anyone, when it comes to suicides, if a firearm is that mechanism, it's the high 90th percentile of completing suicide when an individual uses a firearm.
Right. For the same reason that it is an effective self-defense tool, it is also a very unfortunate but successful suicide tool.
Yeah.
Which is a reason to focus on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's not the tool itself that is the cause, right?
Right. Of course not.
So there's a lot of different groups here. One of them is called 5B Suicide Prevention Alliance. And here in Idaho, depending on where you live, your license plate gets a very specific number and letter. So for Blaine County, it's 5B. So that's where that comes from. But one of the things that we have been working on specifically over the past about year and a half is called a campaign called Preventing Access to Lethal Means, or our PALM campaign. And this is focusing on firearms and access to even over-the-counter drugs, but prescription drugs. And essentially, what can we do to educate the community on their role in helping to prevent suicides? We know that in a lot of cases, and probably in the majority of cases, when it comes to suicide, although people may be suffering from depression and other symptoms, the act of suicide itself is a very spontaneous act.
I've heard that. In other words, spontaneous. Exactly what it means. They're in a bad spot and they make a decision that's not well thought out. They say, "Hey, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to commit suicide." It's not something in a lot of situations where they think about for weeks or months. It's a horrible, quick, brash decision, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, and a lot of times that even includes not really having a plan before. It's one of the questions we ask when someone's at risk for suicide. First of all, we're very direct in those conversations. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Have you ever thought about killing yourself? What is your plan to kill yourself? Jeez. Well, we know because it's spontaneous at times that if individuals have access to a firearm, that decision is going to be a decision that they can't pull back from. And so what we decided to do is that we know the only way to effectively communicate, and this is just risk communication principles 101, for a message to be effective. I don't care if it's about diabetes, I don't care if it's about working out, what food you eat, or when it comes to suicide's access to firearms, it has to come from a trusted source, and it has to come from a source that those individuals connect with. We know that Moms Demand Action, Sandy Hook Promise, even though they may have some of the same goals and the same good intentions, that message will never resonate within the Second Amendment.
Because they're not trusted. Even if it's something that we agree with, like, hey, make sure that kids can't access your fire, whatever it is. Even if it's a common message, which there are very few, they don't have our trust because of the other 99.9% of the things that they do are something we don't agree with. So if an anti-suicide message coming from an anti-gun organization will not affect a gun owner. They won't listen. They won't trust. It doesn't. It rolls right off their back.
Absolutely, and we also know that you can't legislate mental health, right? That's also not effective. You can't have mandates that people, store their firearms in a certain way. That's not going to resonate either. And so our campaign is an organic grassroots campaign put together by the 5B Suicide Prevention Alliance, but in collaboration with the Second Amendment community here. So it's working with our local gun stores, it's working with our gun ranges. Law enforcement is part of that, but we also know that we're not trusted in a lot of this conversation. So we try to be careful in our role in that as well. We're working with vendors that provide CCW training here and other firearms trainers. And the main focus of the campaign is very rarely do people look, especially when we're talking about kids, no one looks at their kid and says, yeah, my son's going to kill himself, right? There's times that happens, but the truth is, and the hard reality that we don't like to talk about is sometimes there are no signs.
Yeah, people are shocked
these
by it.
Sure. Especially kids, are just dealing with these things internally. And we've had some extremely difficult suicides in this in just over a year. We've had 3 15-year-olds, 2 males and a female, commit suicide using a firearm. And in those were cases where you had extremely responsible gun owners. One of them had a cable lock, and the kid actually researched, how do you get this cable lock off the gun? They actually had to research how to load the gun. They didn't even know. And this was coming off of a time that was all smiles, hanging out with friends. Everything was good in their lives. Jeez. And so our campaign is that grassroots campaign. Our gun stores have committed to actually handing out pamphlets. And then with that, we also understand that stories are powerful and personal stories are powerful. And so we're creating short video clips of families that have been impacted by suicide, and actually one individual that survived this suicide by a firearm, and letting them tell their stories to help have that impact.
So what advice, that's amazing work, by the way. And as sheriff, as an elected official, that's awesome that you're supporting it in the way that you are. And I think it's even better with your pro Second Amendment background. You're doing it from a place of authority, and you're making sure that it's getting done right. What would you say, what advice would you have, or what would you tell somebody who's very pro Second Amendment, someone that's very passionate about the Second Amendment and gun ownership? It's something that matters to them more than anything else. What advice would you give if they would like to, get involved or do more when it comes to suicide prevention?
First of all, model the example. Right. I think what most Second Amendment people struggle with is the concept of access to a firearm for self-defense, and keeping a firearm stored in a manner that can truly prevent an individual that shouldn't have access to getting to it when it comes to suicide. So modeling that behavior is the first thing. The second, I think, is being very direct with friends and family. Just telling them, hey, I want you to know that I care for you and I love you and that you're important to me. If you're having a hard time, can I store your firearms for you? Some strategies that we talk about in our campaign, if you're the spouse or a family member, some things that you can do is actually reset the code on a safe. If someone is not in a good position, say, hey, let me reset this code. I won't let you know the code until you get or you feel like you're in the position that you need to be. That's a very easy one. Or just telling a friend, like, hey man, let me just hang on to your guns for a little bit. You know, I understand that you're going through a divorce, you just lost your job, whatever it is. And I care for you and I love you and I'm here to help you. Here, we actually, all of our police departments here will store firearms for individuals. It's a no questions asked when it comes to getting it returned. I'll give you a quick story. We had an officer on a traffic stop. He was running a gun that was in the vehicle. He was doing a check on it. And the call out was one of my former students. And so I went to the traffic stop and I, went up to the window and was like, hey man, what's going on? How are you doing? And his answer to me was not really good. And I'm a cop. I could have left it at that. But I decided to dig more. And I said, what do you mean not very good? And he was talking about his mom and he had just recently lost his grandma and he's in this really hard spot. And I said, hey, first of all, I care for you and I'm sorry that you're going through that. Have you ever thought about killing yourself? And he said, actually, I have. I said, I care for you and I love you. And if you want, we can temporarily hold your firearm. We're not confiscating it. It is yours. Whenever you feel like you're in a good place, come by the PD. We'll give it back to you. No questions asked, no paperwork required. And he let us do that. And he came in about a week later and he got his firearm back and he says, I really want to thank you. That really helped me. And of course, we gave him some resources as well to connect with in between that time. But just that simple offer is extremely important. And you don't have to be, this big activist. But again, modeling that behavior and just talking to people that that say, hey, if you're ever in this position or if you notice someone might be going down that road, I'm willing to hold on to your guns until you think you're in a good spot.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Sheriff. That's a great story. Sounds like you're doing an amazing job up there. I'm really, really happy for you. I just, it blows me away because I knew you when, and now you're a big shot sheriff, and I think that's awesome. And congratulations. Actually, last question: what's that gun hanging on the wall there behind you? The gold one. Is that a Marlin? What do you got there?
Yeah, that's a Winchester 3030 that was donated to the sheriff's office. I think about in the mid 1990s, and so it stays here in the sheriff's office.
Nice. Good looking. Well, my very best to you, my very best to your crew, and please send all my love to your family, your wife, and your beautiful kids. I still remember doing seminars in your office here in Fallbrook, and your beautiful little daughter, I don't even know how old she is now, but she was teeny tiny back then, and she was playing on the floor, and you were lecturing on gun safety and the Second Amendment, and we were begging people to become members of San Diego County gun owners, and she was just off in her own little world playing with toys on the floor. So I just have such fond memories, and I just thank you for all that you've done.
Yeah, well, Mike, thank you so much. And, the being part of the gun owners set me up for success in what I'm doing now and really what I'm doing in life. And Defensive Tactics and Firearms is still up and running. Instructor Shane's still running it. We're still doing Riverside, San Diego CCWs. We're up in the Marietta area now. But yeah, and hopefully I'll be able to make it to Gun Prom, if not this year, maybe next year.
That would be great. Awesome. Sheriff, thank you so much. Sheriff Morgan Ballas, Blaine County, Idaho, former San Diego County Gun Owners Board member. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate you letting us pry you away from the Super Bowl, and thank you for all the initiatives that you're doing and everything that you're doing up there. Awesome job. Thanks, man.
Awesome, Mike. Thank you. Bye.
Dude, that was cool. That was a cool interview, right?
That was good.
Yeah, my buddy Morgan. All right. Every week we find a defensive gun use story, and Alicia tells us the ins and outs. She's Alicia Curtin, so we call it Curtain Call. This week, an armed car owner shoots at teen car thieves in Southwest Philly, hitting 2. What are the details here? That doesn't sound fun at all.
No.
It sounds horrible.
And, at first when I saw this headline, I thought, was this the one? Because if you recall, it's probably been about a year, maybe a little bit longer. We had another story. It wasn't too dissimilar from this. It was a number of youth. And we talked about parenting. We kind of talked about kids. And I thought, is this just the same story? No, this one's dated February 5th.
Great.
Of this year. This is a new story. The article comes from concealednation.org. And the heading just says, as Mike stated, armed car owner shoots at teen car thieves in Southwest Philly, hitting 2. So really the nuts and bolts of this is that we have a gentleman who had parked his vehicle on the street in Philadelphia. Really safe town, right?
Yeah. Well, they're in the Super Bowl. They're in the Super Bowl, so.
So the incident occurred just after 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And so it says a neighbor alerted the car's owner that several teens appeared to be trying to steal his Honda, which is parked in an alleyway between Belmar Terrace and Windsor Avenue. I'm not sure of the neighborhood, not sure if, and that's irrelevant, essentially. So we have a number of youth trying to break into this man's car. Now, I don't know the complete self-defense law and every aspect of it in Philadelphia. However, we know here in California, and so I think that we can kind of translate and we can see how this applies to us here in California. In California, we cannot shoot to protect property. We can't defend property. So this gentleman was not in his vehicle. There was nobody in the car. It was simply parked. He got a notification that sounds like, there's likelihood that we have some teens trying to break into his car, and so he decides to go out. When he goes out to confront the suspects, one of the teens drew a firearm.
Good Lord.
So these are kids.
How old are these?
We know that 2 of them were 13. They don't give us the ages of the others.
13 years old. So this guy
Correct.
gets notification that his car is being messed with. He goes out to see what's going on, and there are a number of kids. At least 2 of them are 13, and at least one of them pulls a gun on him.
Breaks my heart. Yeah.
So what happened from there?
So in response to that, he pulls his own. The article states he fired at least 7 shots, causing all 4 suspects to flee. Police later found 2 13-year-olds suffering from gunshot wounds just a block away. One was shot in the lower back. The other was shot in the leg. They were transported to a local hospital and are in stable condition. The other 2 teens were found a short distance away and were identified by the car owners as part of the group. We don't know their ages. So the idea here is that if you kind of think about this, if you think, well, how could this have gone differently? What are some other options? Because the reality is, if this were you, what would you do? If I was to come and say, hey, Mike, there's someone breaking into your car in the parking lot.
I'd probably go out there and check it out. I mean,
right, that's our human nature.
Yeah, call the cop. I mean, you can't know what's going on. Who knows what's going on? You can't know. Well, this is 2 13-year-old kids with a gun.
Right.
I mean, I got this story about how there were a bunch of kids in our community pool at 1 a.m, and I went out and said, "Hey, you guys got to leave," and that escalated. And you know what I mean? So you don't know. Right. You can't really blame the guy.
Absolutely not.
But maybe calling cops probably would have been I called the cops. In my situation, so he'd probably, I don't know if he did or not, or if it says, but calling the cops would be I'd add that to the to-do list.
I absolutely agree. And it doesn't state or clarify if the call was made before or after. We know law enforcement may get involved, but it doesn't state at what point they were called.
Yeah.
But, he goes out, and I think that's our human nature, is to go out. I mean, was that right or wrong? I don't fault him for it. He goes out and he sees them, and the fact that the article doesn't specify, but the fact that they state that these kids pulled a firearm on him tells me that he did have some kind of interaction. He made some kind of statement. It wasn't just let me go out and take a peek and see what's going on with my car. He likely, it sounds to me like he made some kind of statement or ordered or said something to them. And in response to that, they pulled that firearm. At that point that they pulled the firearm, he was absolutely 100% justified in pulling his.
Yeah.
No questions asked. Now, is it horrible that these were against 13-year-old kids?
Yes.
Yeah. But we don't get a choice.
We don't get a choice.
Right. He had to defend himself against that firearm.
Did anything happen to him? Did he?
No mention of any charges coming his way.
Nope.
Nope.
I mean, it's horrible that this guy went through this.
It is.
It's horrible that, that's what he ended up having to do to defend his life. It's horrible that they have two 13-year-olds and, one or both of them had a gun. That whole situation's horrible. But the whole time, I can't stop thinking that there are a bunch of extremist anti-gun people, and this is going to add to the statistics that they use against us to take our guns.
Right.
So they're going, hey, look, two 13-year-olds got shot, gun violence against kids.
Mm-hmm.
When it's
there's not going to be any mention of the gun violence that started with the kids.
There's not going to be any mention that there were 1,000 things that went wrong, that these kids ended up being professional criminals at 13 with an illegal gun.
This isn't their first vehicle they broke into. Right.
No way. Probably there's no way. This isn't they weren't just they didn't get out of Bible study, and decide, well, this is the day we're going to go steal a gun and break it. I mean, no, of course not. But they're going to use these statistics and they're going to pull on heartstrings and try to make people believe that there's this there's this epidemic of kids getting killed by guns. They're going to use that against us to take our guns. Even though this wasn't this was a legal gun owner. This is somebody who's trying to defend himself. This isn't a problem with sane, trained, law-abiding gun owners. This is a problem with somebody who decided to be a professional criminal when they were a child.
Yep.
Just think back. What were you doing when you were 13? I was riding bikes and throwing dirt clogs at my friends. You know what I mean? And these kids are, Grand Theft Auto with a gun.
And before anybody gets up in arms too about the fact that if there was one gun, it sounds like he shot an unarmed kid. When one is armed, they all work in concert.
Well, not only that, but this guy's terrified for his life.
Right? No, absolutely
terrified for his life. But it just absolutely just kills me that somehow this is a weakness in the second. This is the fault of gun owners in the Second Amendment. These kids, this cultural issue, this moral issue, and they're going to use this. They're going to use these statistics. These statistics are just going to be lumped into violence against children, and it just absolutely just kills me that they're going to use this against me. They're going to want to take my guns away from me because somebody didn't raise their kids right. Somebody's community didn't look after their children. Somebody's culture taught these children that they should grow up to be professional criminals. It's so frustrating. Anyway.
Just ruin your whole night.
I know. What else? Anything else on that?
That's all. The article, it's still very new. This just happened just this past week. So there's no mention of, as you asked, there's no mention of any charges against this guy. There's no mention of where did the gun come from. Do these kids have a criminal history? Of course, that'll be all protected. Even if they do, we won't know. But it just breaks my heart that that these kids got that burr in their heart to take to go this course.
Every piece of this story is heartbreaking, but I'm glad he's alive and survived.
Absolutely.
And good for that guy. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to deployment. This is where you need to be. We want to make sure that we make activism easy. This segment is sponsored by Red, White, and Badass Brew. If you want some good coffee, go to rwbbcoffee.com. rwbbcoffee.com. That stands for Red, White, and Badass Brew Coffee. If you enter GOR, you get 15% off your coffee. I recommend you check out their whiskey business. It's super good coffee. They'll ship it to you. Local guy. Had them on just a couple of weeks ago. Highly recommend. America is the land of the self-governed, which means you have to be involved. Freedom is not a spectator sport, and Gun Owners Radio makes it easy for you to get involved. And here are just a few ways you can do that. Train with a national expert. The how of shooting is easy. The when and why of defensive gun use, well, that's the real challenge. Learn from Masad Ayub at his Armed Citizens Rules of Engagement class on March 8 and 9. Knowledge is your best defense. Secure your spot now at gunownersradio.com. Just click the link for Mastering Self-Defense. So check it out. Be there or be square. Also, meet Masad Ayub at our exclusive welcome dinner. Join us for an evening with Masad Ayub on March 5th at Discount Gun Mart on Marina, right here, with mouth-watering food from Sauced Pizzeria.
I've heard of that place.
Beach. Best spaghetti ever. Tickets are on sale now. Space is limited. Don't wait. Just click on the Mastering Self-Defense link on the GunOwnersRadio.com website. Okay, so that's confirmed. Sauce Pizza, they're in. We got the menu. Okay, I got the thumbs up. We need volunteers. Be part of Mastering Self-Defense Week. We're still looking for a few helping hands for the welcome reception dinner. Sign up at sdcgo.org/volunteer. I'd recommend that you check that about once a week, maybe twice a month at least. There are all kinds of opportunities popping up. It's sdcgo.org, so our website, and then /volunteer. There's a lot of opportunities that come and go. So if you check it regularly and jump in, just volunteer a couple of times a year, and it really makes a difference. Intro to Off-Grid Communications. That's March 15th in Oceanside. If you want to stay connected when traditional methods fail, you'll want to take this class. You'll take home the skills, practice, and gear so you can make sure you're connected when the grid goes down. Sign up at the website, gunownersradio.com, for Intro to Off-Grid Communications. That's on March 15th in Oceanside. Are these classes for you? Let us know. We're gauging interest for 2 exciting potential classes. First one is Tactical First Aid for Gun Owners, where you learn first aid every gun owner should have. The second one is First Shot, a beginner's guide to guns and safety. First steps can be overwhelming and intimidating. This is the perfect class for absolute beginners navigating their first steps into gun ownership. So if you are interested in those 2 classes, let us know. Go to gunownersradio.com. We only want to bring you things that are useful to you and that you value, so please let us know. So that's Tactical First Aid for Gun Owners and or First Shot, a beginner's guide to safety and guns.
I'd like to add in one more thing on that last one.
Yes.
A beginner's guide to guns and safety. I don't believe it's just for gun owners looking to purchase their first gun. I think that there's a number of people out there with a gun that have no clue, that have no training. They should be there too.
Why are you looking at me when you say that? I feel attacked.
I don't know. Guns are scary.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just a fun class, to be honest with you. But let us know. And you know what it's really fun to do is take a class, like a remedial class. Maybe you've been a gun owner for a while. Maybe you've taken other classes, but bring somebody to that remedial class, and that way it's kind of dual purpose. You get somebody who's learning some of the basics, and then you pick up maybe some things that you hadn't picked up before.
That's it.
Yeah, so check out sdcgo.org/volunteers. We do need volunteers. Let's see. We need volunteers at Discount Gun Mart in Santee on the February 15th. February 22nd, the Turkey Tune-Up Tabletop. We need people to sign up there. And then February 22nd, also North County Shooting Center has a tabletop. And then March 5th, of course, the Masad Ayub welcome reception that we just talked about. So go to sdcgo.org/volunteer, VOLUNTEER. Be the change you want to see. Okay, let's get Sam on the line. Talk to Sam the Gunman. Time for everybody's favorite segment, Stump My Nephew, which is sponsored by Seal One. Seal1.com. Their website again, seal1.com. Cleaning your guns shouldn't take forever. Seal One makes it faster and easier so you can spend more time on the range or just living your life. And now, what everyone's been waiting for, Seal One is finally available in an aerosol. That means even quicker, no hassle cleaning. Just spray, wipe, and you're good to go. But here's an insider tip. Seal One isn't just for firearms. Use it around the house, on squeaky door hinges, sticky sliding doors, window tracks, tools, and metal parts in your garage. Really anywhere you'd normally grab WD-40. It cleans off rust and grime while keeping things running smooth. Try it today. Grab yours now at seal1.com. One and done with Seal One. I like it. They're going after that WD-40 crowd.
Okay. Yeah.
I think I bet you it smells better than WD-40. WD-40 is not an offensive smell.
No, it's not.
Like Hoppies.
No.
Like Hoppies like takes over your entire life for about a
Right.
day and a half. WD-40 does have a smell, but I think Seal One's got a beat in
Yeah,
the
they do.
smell department.
Yeah.
Have you ever used, I don't know. I think I've been guilty of using WD-40 on guns before when it's like my only option, you know?
I've not gotten that desperate yet. Nope. But I do fix squeaky hinges with WD-40. That's about all I do.
One big advantage that Seal One would have over WD-40 is WD-40 it does collect dust. It does attract dust.
Right.
Where Seal One is really more repellent. So at least that's what gives it a big advantage over, when it comes to guns. I would imagine if you're working on a window or a door or something else that's squeaking, it'd probably be a big advantage there. So check out seal1.com. Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Good. Are you a WD-40 guy?
No. No.
He sounds a little offended that you even asked.
No. Like I just yeah, all right. Well, not a WD-40 guy. Your grandfather had the same bottle of WD-40 through the Carter administration, the Reagan administration, the first Bush, and maybe the Clinton administration as well. I remember it fondly. Okay. All right. Here you go. Ready for your question?
Sure, let's have it.
Why are we talking about WD-40 so much? We should be talking more about Seal One. They're the new masters. Okay, here you go. This one comes from. Do you want to read it?
Sure.
Okay, go for it.
I was just getting a big kick out of the opening line there.
Yeah.
All right. You ready, Sam? Pancakes.
Hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. It's from. Go ahead. What is it?
Pam Cakes,
Pam Cakes from.
Muttontown Village.
Nice.
And she asks, I'm assuming she, what was the first rifle developed in Japan and adopted for military use?
Pancakes from, what was that, Muttontown?
Muttontown Village.
Muttontown Village. I've heard of some weird California place names, but that's got to be a new one.
No, this is
That
Long
sounds
Island.
more-
Pam Cakes was.
Okay, I was going to say it sounds more Pennsylvania or New York. So
You may know her by her new last name, which is Falker. Whoever wrote this is making a movie reference. Pam Cakes from Muttontown Village was Meet the Parents.
Oh, is that what that's from?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I can't answer that one, but I attempt to answer the question of what was it? What was Japan's first modern military service rifle?
First rifle.
Yeah, what was the first rifle developed in Japan and adopted for military use?
Okay, first rifle developed in Japan and adopted for military use. Now, I feel like this is going to be one of those deep cuts where it's something from like the 1700s, right after Europeans arrived, and they made something domestically. But I'm not even going to attempt to answer that way because I would get hopelessly lost. And honestly, I don't know when exactly they began manufacturing firearms there. But what I will say is that the first, I feel like this is wrong, but the first military service rifle, the first Japanese military service rifle of which I'm aware is the Murata, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. But that was a single shot bolt action breech loader. The ones with which Americans and other Westerners will be more familiar are the Type 38 and Type 99 used in World War II. And the reason I bring that up is because I won't show it on camera right now because I don't want us to get in trouble with YouTube. But I actually have my Type 99 right next to me on my bed here. I had it out for. I was demonstrating some features of it, but I'm going to say it's the Murata was their first military rifle.
If you had to guess when the Murata came out, we're not going. This isn't part of the question, but if you had, because it didn't say when, it said what. But if you had to guess when about the Murata, was manufactured, when was it introduced to the world? What year? What decade would you say it was was introduced? Any idea?
Well, it's got to be shortly after the Meiji Restoration, so I'm going to say
That's what I was going to say.
1890s.
That was the hint I was going to give. Is it shortly after the Meiji Restoration?
Can't even spell it.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. So what do you?
I'm going to say early 1890s. 1890s.
So here's the answer. Can I do the answer? You want to do the answer?
Go for it.
The answer is the Murata in 1880. You were you were right on with the name, and you were very, very close with the year. The Murata rifle was based on the French Fusil Gras Mle.
Gras.
Yeah. In 1874. It was used from 1880 to 1898. The Murata rifle was the first locally produced service rifle for Japan. The Murata rifle was the first standard production military rifle in Japan to use smokeless powder. The Murata rifle was also an early repeating bolt-action rifle, which, by the way,
I messed that up. It's a repeater.
It is, but how would you describe it? Describe a repeating bolt-action rifle.
Repeater just means that it has some sort of a magazine. I messed it up. I said it was a single shot, but I knew the part of it being bolt action. But if it's based on the Gras, then
okay. So repeating bolt action rifle just means it's got a magazine. It's not like
so if you have an AR-15 or a Glock, those are repeaters.
Okay. But a repeating bolt action, does that mean it's
yeah?
Is that still semi-automatic?
No, it has a magazine.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with
the
term.
If it's based on the Gras,
yeah.
Now I know the Lebel used a tubular magazine, so if I'm guessing the Gras did as well, which would mean the Murata did, but I don't know.
Here's this is a bonus question. What was the next very successful rifle that Japan developed? It was the standard service rifle until the end of World War II for Japan.
I'm going to say Type 38, but it wasn't the standard service rifle till the end of World War II.
Is there another name for the Type 38?
It's probably.
Well, it's.
I think what he answered is a type of what this is.
Oh,
I think.
Japan later. Well, here's what it says. Japan later developed the.
Well, wait.
Oh.
Stop right there.
Oh.
The Type 38 is often referred to. Type 38 was its Japanese military designation. But it's often referred to as Arisaka after the guy who designed it. People incorrectly refer to Type 99s as such as well, but even though the designs share some similarities, the Type 99 is not to be referred to properly as Arisaka because it was not designed by the same guy.
All right, there you go. Pam cakes from Muttontown Village. I would say that Sam successfully bested your question. Awesome job. You still get a hat or a shirt or whatever you'd like. You can wear it all around Long Island. With your father being former CIA, I'm assuming he's pro Second Amendment, but he should enjoy San Diego County Gunners. Okay, what about your blogs, man? Are you doing some blogs? You got anything interesting coming out? How's it looking for the...
Depending on your definition of interesting, I think they're interesting, which is why I wrote
it up.
Well, what do you got?
My most recent blog post is titled "What the Heck Happened to Big Green?" Now,
what the heck happened to Big Green?
Big Green, yep.
Okay.
That is a common colloquial term, sort of an affectionate. Oop, my light source went away. Affectionate colloquial term for Remington. And as many of you may be aware, in 2020, Remington went bankrupt is kind of an oversimplification, but they changed ownership. And what I cover in the blog post, just briefly, because it's you can read the whole thing if you want. It's about a little bit about the death of Remington and its afterlife. What are they up to now? What has happened to Remington Firearms, the company, in the past 5 years since its change in ownership? And I talk a little bit about that. The next part is going up tomorrow morning, if I remember my schedule correctly, which I hope I do. It's going up tomorrow morning for you guys, tomorrow at noon for me, which is What the Heck Happened to Big Green Part 2. It talks about the ammunition side. Now, some of you may not know this, but Remington Firearms, the company, and Remington, the company where if you go to remington.com, that's what you see. Those are two different companies now. The only relationship is that they still share the same name and logo from when they were under one roof, but they haven't been for some time now. Remington, the company that's just called, if you just type in remington.com in your search or in your web browser and go to that, that's Remington Ammunition. And they're owned by a different parent company than Remington Firearms.
Interesting. All right, cool. And to see that blog, go to either San Diego County Gun Owners website or Orange County Gun Owners website or Inland Empire Gun Owners website. And at the end, just add /blog, and you'll see Sam's awesome job that he does on the articles that he writes. And so usually come about every Monday or so, 2-3 times a month, he comes up with an extremely interesting blog, some of the best Second Amendment content on the internet. Thank you, Sam. Awesome job.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, hang out. We got a couple things to talk about. You're not going anywhere, are you? You going to go watch the Super Bowl?
Nah, I don't have a dog in this fight.
Okay. I don't know. Do you have a team? Who's your team? Do you have a team?
Packers, of course.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Don't you? Are you an owner?
I have one share in the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
That counts.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I think I say every once in a while. I think they've only done it 3 or 4 times. They open it up, and you can go buy shares of the Packers, and basically it gets you a nice little certificate that says you're an owner. Did your grandma buy that for you?
I received it as a gift from family years ago. I don't remember who was the ringleader on that little operation, but
yeah,
I am a proud Packers owner. I don't have my cheese head on me. It's in my closet right behind me, but I won't bother going to get it right now.
My mom and dad are my mom especially. My mom was a very vocal Packer fan, so they're owners as well. Them and like 50,000 other people or something. I forget how many owners the Packers have, but okay. So all right, well then stick with us. We've got a couple of interesting stories. The first one is, there was an election in November, and Poway is one of those.
I heard something about that.
Yeah. Poway is one of those cities. It's kind of an interesting city. It's rural in a lot of ways. It's still a nice little town. I mean, it's not like some podunk little city. It's got really nice houses, and it's got a downtown and everything, and it's got a rich history. But it is rural. There's a lot of equestrian, but it's kind of part cowboy equestrian and part I'm fancy and rich equestrian. And, it's tough to tell exactly where I joke that, are they North County or are they East County? If you're buying your house, they're East County. If you're selling your house, they're North County. Their mayor wears a cowboy hat, but it's a really nice cowboy hat. So it's kind of an interesting little burg. And we endorsed somebody there. We endorsed 2 people there. And unfortunately, the person that won over our endorsement is a guy named Tony Blaine. And it looks like, I don't know this for a fact yet, and a lot of these are accusations, but I have a strong feeling that they're going to need a new city council member to replace this guy. The city of Poway, for the first time ever in its 45-year history, actually had to censure a city council member, and it is ugly. The Poway City Council voted Tuesday to censure District 2 City Council member Tony Blaine over accusations including bribery, vote trading, and intimidation tactics. I was reading some of these details, and this quack is a total clown. And I stand by that. I don't care what happens. The stuff he tried to pull is absolutely ridiculous. On paper, he actually doesn't look like a bad guy. He's fairly active in the community. He's a physician. He's actually a colonel in the National Guards or Reserves, Army National Guard, I think. Army Reserve National Guard. But this guy is an absolute, some of the stuff that he's done, he's an absolute joke. And it's not like he showed up and started stirring things up in a positive way. I'm all for somebody, coming in and saying, hey, we're gonna shake things up in a positive way, like what Trump's doing on the national level. I like a lot of the things that he's doing. He just went in and started being ridiculous from day one. This is the first and only censure in the city's 45-year history, said Poway Mayor Steve Voss. This is not a step we take lightly. Blaine is also accused of using law enforcement to silence his critics, which included some constituents, according to a memorandum for the censure resolution. A censure is a formal reprimand. It doesn't actually remove him from office. However, in an email included in the evidence, the Poway city attorney says the council member's actions towards the colleagues are, quote, likely criminal in nature. This guy's been in office for about 5 minutes, and he's already getting censured, and what they're censuring him over is likely criminal in nature. Let's watch the video. Let's watch the news report for it real quick.
Local politics now, and for the first time in the city's 45-year history, the Poway City Council voted to censure a council member.
Councilman Tony Blaine is accused of attempting to bribe and threaten his colleagues and some of his constituents. NBC 7's Kelvin Henry joins us with how he's responding and what the mayor of Poway is saying.
On Tuesday, the council unanimously voted to censure council member Blaine. Now he's firing back, accusing his colleagues of corruption. Today, I spoke with the mayor, and he says he is doing his best to protect the city's name and the city's best interests.
Poway is a great place to live, work, and play.
Poway Mayor Steve Voss intends to keep it that way.
Mayor Voss?
Aye. The people deserve representatives who will listen to them and act in their best interest.
On Tuesday night, Mayor Voss and city council members were present and voted to censure Tony Blaine.
We have a council member, Mr. Blaine, who engaged in vote trading, bribery, attempted extortion, and this wasn't just a request of another council member. It was a shakedown, trying to strong arm the other council member into turning his back on his constituents.
Voss says there is evidence that this was over Blaine attempting to get other council members to vote a particular way, or he would attempt to recall a fellow council member. In one of those emails to District 3 council member Peter DeHoff, Blaine says in part, quote, I might be inclined to drop my recall effort on you if you vote to support a D1 special election on January 21st instead of a 2-year appointment. Blaine is also accused of bullying some of his constituents online, then trying to use law enforcement to retaliate.
I was disgusted, and I immediately turned what I had over to the city attorney and city manager.
Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad. I don't know if people really fully understand just how bad it is. Let me give a couple more bits of detail. Vote trading was the number thing. This is directly from the censure, the actual official document that Poway produced and voted on. Vote trading. First, Councilmember Bryan attempted to engage in illegal vote trading, offering to vote for my appointment as deputy mayor in exchange for me voting to support a special election rather than an appointment. A felony pursuant to Penal Code Section 86. A felony. There have been articles on this subject from 3 news outlets, Axios, the Union Tribune, Fox 5, all of which sought the input of different independent legal experts, et cetera, et cetera. Number 2, threats of recall, adverse action against me and prospective council applicants for not voting as council member Blaine desired. Council member Blaine threatened adverse action against myself, the mayor, and now council member Pikus, unless I voted as he desired. When I did not vote as he desired, he publicly stated he would follow through with those threats in a local news interview. This also appears illegal under Penal Code Section 165. So this isn't just a matter of, hey, look, if you don't vote the way I want you to vote, then I'm not going to support you for re-election, or I'm going to tell people you're a jerk or whatever. He was actually saying, hey, I'm going to take this official action unless you do what I want. I mean, this is, I'm not an attorney. This isn't legal advice. I'm not, but everything that's being described here is so textbook felony. It's something they teach you right out of the box when you're becoming an elected official. By the way, Steve Voss is a good guy. I've never had a bad interaction with Steve Voss. He's a very good man. tells the truth. He tells it like it is, and all the experience I've ever had with him. He's pro Second Amendment. He's a Republican. Tony Blaine is pro Second Amendment and is a Republican. Part of the reason why we're not partisan. So number 3, attempting to use law enforcement to silence critics and members of the public. On 2 occasions, Councilmember Blaine directed the city manager to file reports with the Sheriff's Department when individuals sent emails critical of his behavior to the city account. Councilmember Blaine asked the city manager to send law enforcement to these individuals' homes. Resident names have been redacted, et cetera, et cetera. Councilmember Blaine also directly told these individuals to stop contacting him or he'd call the sheriff. Both of these individuals contacted the city extremely worried about adverse law enforcement action. When one of these individuals demanded Councilmember Blaine resign via email after his attempted vote trading came to light, Councilmember Blaine filed a report with the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department concluded no crime occurred. It appears clear that this individual was simply voicing his dissent to Councilmember Blaine's actions in his position as an elected official, which is something any member of the community is entitled to do. So they did this censure. Colonel Blaine, you're an absolute clown. You were a total joke. Anybody that would use law enforcement as their personal Gestapo over an email, just beat it. Do the right thing and resign. Get out of public. You should not be in public office. You shouldn't be anywhere near power. I don't know how you made your way through the ranks to becoming a colonel, but you are such a ridiculous clown. Leave. Get out of public office. Just say, hey, you know what? I tried and failed. Resign. And there's at least a slim chance that people would have some degree of respect for your ability to do that. I swear, this is so ridiculous. And you see this a lot. You see this not quite to this degree, but man, you give people just a little bit of power on a city council or a school board or whatever, and it just goes right to their head. And like I said, this isn't a matter where he ran afoul of some gray area. No, this is as direct as it possibly gets. Becoming a city council member, receiving a critical email that hurt your feelings, and then, calling the cops. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, I wanted to bring that to your attention. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope he gets thrown out on his ear and we replace him. I don't know who with who. Maybe the guy that we endorsed would be interested in running it. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that Tony Blaine has thoroughly screwed up, and it looks like he's really stepped in it. So what are your thoughts? You guys have any thoughts on this?
I absolutely agree. I think you said it strongly and you said it well, and I agree.
Yeah.
Unreal.
It is. I got to tell you, the other part of this is people focus on national. They have no idea the drama and excitement that's going on right here in Poway.
Right.
I really do wonder. I have a foot in Orange County and Riverside and San Bernardino County, not as deep as San Diego, but I really truly often wonder if politics in other counties are this interesting. Stuff happens here like this all the time. We just had a board of supervisor step down, right?
Yeah, right. Oh, that's right.
Under mysterious circumstances. Mm-hmm. We had somebody, before Fletcher was thrown out of office. It's fast. The stuff that happens here in politics in San Diego is absolutely fast.
Do we have any answers to that, by the way? The mystery step down?
No. The latest rumor I heard is that she ran afoul of, this is all rumor. I don't know. This is an insider who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. But she ran afoul of the unions, and they basically found some dirt on her and said, you better beat feet and get out of here. So she did. So I don't know. Who knows? I don't know if it'll ever come out. But Sam, what do you think, man?
You ask if politics in other counties are is this interesting, this exciting. Yeah. The political situation in other states isn't this exciting. It seems like every other week I'm on here and you guys are talking about some big political scandal or other going on in San Diego County. Here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the last time I can remember there being any type of remotely major political scandal was 6 years ago. And that's in the whole state.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is. You just don't know. They hide it really well.
Well, I know there is a lot of corruption and slimy behavior going on, but I think maybe the fact that we're right across the Potomac from, the state, I don't live right across from D.C., but D.C. is right there. I guess that's the magnet for all the slimy, disgusting, just scum of the earth who want to exploit and betray their fellow Americans for their own personal gain.
The interesting thing is on this guy's website, Blaine's website, the guy that, is in trouble. He talks a lot about like, hey, I'm going to return, trust back to the city council, and he's going to dig out corruption or whatever. And no sooner did he get into, hold politicians accountable, make Poway more affordable, okay, whatever, improve quality of life. But he talks throughout here. By the way, his campaign website looks like a sixth grade, project. It's really horrible, but whatever. It's a local race. I'm not gonna, the only reason I'm holding that against him is because of his stupid actions since he's been on. But anyway, he talks all about, over and over again how he's the guy to trust, and transparency, honesty, integrity. Yeah, I don't think he brought transparency, honesty, and integrity back to the city council. Yeah, and then the next sentence, no more backroom deals.
No more, just one, but no more.
No, after his, you mean? I mean, the exact definition of a non-transparent, dishonest, lack of integrity backroom deal. That's exactly what he did. I mean, I really kind of wonder what's going through this clown's head. Like, does he think, I wonder if he thinks he's innocent. You know what I mean? Does he know he's guilty? Does he realize he is, doing the exact thing he's complaining about? Or do you think he feels justified? I mean, it just baffles me. Anyway. All right. Let's move on. You want to move on?
Nice hat,
else?
though.
What's that?
Nice hat, though.
He does have a nice hat, I got to tell you. It looks like he's wearing what is that, a fedora?
Maybe a trilby.
Okay. He looks like he may have been a ska fan back in the 90s, He's kind of wearing that,
possibly jazz musician.
maybe, but he's kind of got that, I go down to festivals at Del Mar and listen to ska and listen to them play the same horn riffs over and over again, and with my fedora hat or whatever, and dance around in a circle. Those guys.
In Del Mar, of course.
Yeah, it's always the same. Like, it's like, anyway. All right, well, good luck with that, Tony Blaine. Truly hope you do the right thing and get the hell out of office. Okay, so next story is, this is kind of interesting. What are you laughing at?
Because I know what it is.
You're already laughing?
I am.
All right. The next story is blind man gets license to carry permit to make a point about Indiana gun laws. A blind man is raising concerns about Indiana gun laws after he was allowed to get a license to carry a handgun. Terry Sutherland told iTeam 8, that's the news channel, that he got his permit to prove a point and to try to spark conversations about reasonable gun legislation. Sutherland was using his sight seeing stick when he went to the city-county building to get fingerprinted for the permit. He said he spoke with several people who knew that he was blind. Quote, it just went very smoothly and normally. Nobody seemed to think anything about it. It was mind-boggling. It shocked me more than I expected. I thought at the last second somebody would go, wait a minute, and it just would not get approved. I'd get a letter that explained, listen, you can't aim a gun or put a bullet where it's supposed to go, so we're not going to give you a permit, Sutherland said. That didn't happen. Now his license to carry permit sits in a lanyard around his neck. Sutherland is not against the Second Amendment. Pfft, whatever. Before he lost his sight as a teenager, he learned how to safely use guns, blah, 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 blah. Here's the thing. This is such a this is a red herring. Is that the right term? I mean, are we worried about blind people with guns? Like, does this happen? Is this something we should be worried about? You know, he's basically taking this idea that, hey, as a blind man, I was able to get a permit, and somehow connecting that to, you know, people getting hurt with guns. Is this a huge problem? You know, are blind people getting gun permits and then robbing banks? Is that happening and I'm not aware of it? I mean, this is absolutely ludicrous. This was clearly a stunt. One has nothing to do with the other, but these kind of stories provoke a reaction like, oh, geez, we have to do better. We have to do better how? Like, is he suggesting that we make it illegal for blind people to own guns? Like, what exactly is going on? You know what I mean? Like, there's not like a direct connect here. He's just saying, well, everybody's irresponsible. A blind guy got a gun. Because it's not even a problem with him. He didn't even do anything irresponsible with the gun.
Right.
Like, there hasn't been a problem. He's just suggesting he's a problem. And he pulled off this stunt, to try to hurt gun owners is really all it amounts to. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts? What do you guys think?
A couple things I would like to point out. First, as much importance as we ascribe to permits of all types, especially concealed carry permits, it is fundamentally a piece of paper. And while it gives you the legal permission to do something without getting put in prison, it doesn't have a magical ability to stop people who do not have it from doing the thing that would be illegal without it. So what I'm trying to say is that if you are a criminal and you want to go out and commit a crime with a gun, then not having a concealed carry permit isn't stopping you physically from stuffing it in your cargo shorts or in your waistband and going out and holding up a 7-Eleven. Now, disclaimer, please do not do that. I do not endorse holding up 7-Elevens or Wawas for that matter, which I guess isn't a concern for you guys.
We don't have Wawas.
But, well, your loss. But in all seriousness, I have yet to see any compelling evidence that shows that people who have concealed carry permits are, to any degree, more likely to go out and commit violent crimes with or without firearms. And in fact, the other thing I'd like to point out is that one organization which attempts to use data to make that point, the Violence Policy Center, and a gun control lobbying group, they have a website that they call the Concealed Carry Killers Database. And a couple years ago, I went through that database and I made a blog post about it. That's up on the SDCGO blog, showing that if their statistics are accurate, which it seems like they go to great lengths to keep their database as up to date as they can. If their numbers are accurate, concealed carry permit holders are dramatically less likely to go and commit any sort of violent crime with firearms. And their database, furthermore, includes accidents and things of that nature. So using their own data, one can draw the conclusion that those of us who have permits are much, much safer than the baseline population. Now, if they don't make any claims that their data is accurate and that their database is comprehensive, then it isn't a database, it's a set of case studies. So maybe they should change that.
One of our favorite listeners is on YouTube. He goes by Gun Websites, and he just sent a message saying, I interviewed Carrie McWilliams at GRPC, Gun Rights Policy Conference in 2018. Carrie wrote a book about the CCW permits, and he is 100% blind.
We'll tell you, well, it's not super common. I have assisted in a class where we had blind people in the course.
Yeah. And there's different degree of blind, right?
There are, but in the ones that I had, they were 100%.
Gotcha.
No sight.
They
actually did well.
There's a local guy. His name's Pete. He's got this Instagram. It's actually a really interesting Instagram. He's a blind surfer.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he's got this wetsuit that says blind surfer on it so that people like know,
Yeah.
people in the lineup or whatever. But he's got a coach, and he's a blind surfer, and he goes out and surfs. But one of the other things he does is he goes to the gun range.
Yeah.
And he shoots at the gun range. In fact, I can't tell, but I think it actually might have been. It looked a lot like a Discount Gun Mart. He's right here in PB. Like I said, his name's
What
Pete.
if he was the one in my class?
Maybe he was. Really good dude, really interesting. But it's just such a reach that this guy's doing this. He goes on to say, if I can have, by the way, if I can, this is a quote directly from the guy in Indiana. If I can have a gun, why can't I have a driver's license? What's the worst that could happen? I could kill somebody with a car, Sutherland said. Is there is there any instant? Can he show us anything? Like, is there a rash of blind people shooting others? I mean, this is so ridiculous.
Or of people, for that matter, of people waiting to get their permits, and then immediately when they get their permits, going out and holding up Wawas.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I probably feel more secure with, blind people because they're not going to use it. They're going to get the permit. They're not going to do anything. So anyway, this is the kind of ridiculous stunt that I just absolutely hate. This guy isn't doing anything good. I'm so sorry about his sight. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's a lifetime thing or it happened to him later. But this kind of, anti-gun activism, it's just ridiculous. But I definitely, again, one of the things we try to do here is we try to pull back the curtain. So, is this something we should be concerned about? No. Take it the next step and think it through. Are blind people and guns or blind people, is that really a problem? Is that an issue? Does it really indicate that our system needs to be changed? That the Second Amendment is somehow flawed because this blind guy got a gun or got a permit? I don't even know if he got a gun. He just got a permit. So anyway, all right. Well, there you go.
If someone wanted to make a point about ease of obtaining concealed carry permits, then the man bites dog story would be, convicted violent criminal gets concealed carry permit. But I haven't heard of that happening. Not to say there aren't paperwork slip-ups, but I am not aware of any instances of that happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even like there's some kind of crime you can only commit as a blind person. You know what I mean? Like, gee.
Or that you can only commit with a permit.
Yeah. It's just
why would there be a permit that lets you go commit crimes?
I mean, again, clearly somebody that wasn't trying to help a situation. He was just trying to hurt your right to keep and bear arms. By the way, this just in, Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl 40-6. 40-6. The Kansas City Chiefs got absolutely demolished. I don't care, but I thought I'd announce it. I don't really give a crap. I haven't thought about the Philadelphia Eagles since I don't know when. So, and I certainly don't really give a rip about the Kansas City Chiefs. So screw them both. But anyway, thank you all for listening. That's your Super Bowl edition of Gun Owners Radio. Thank you, Alicia, for all that you do. And thank you, Sam, for everything you do. And producer Rich over there, thank you, buddy. And listeners, thank you all very, very much. Don't forget to join San Diego County Gun Owners, join Orange County Gun Owners, join Inland Empire Gun Owners, and make a donation to Not Me California, notmeca.org, whatever you can do. I got to tell you, we're going to focus a lot on funding notmecalifornia.org this year because there's a lot to do. So without further ado, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and congratulations to the Eagles. I think Reggie White was the last time I paid attention to the Eagles.
It's been a hot minute.
That was a long time.
Yeah.
He actually ended up going to the Packers, but I think I paid more attention to him at the Eagles. It's been a long time. And then, what was it, Randall Cunningham. Randall Cunningham back in the 90s. He was a really good quarterback. And then, of course, the Mark Wahlberg movie came out. And I thought a little bit about the Eagles with, what is his name? Popeil or whatever?
Yeah.
Papali.
Something like that, yeah.
So, anyway, congratulations, Eagles. Go Genos and Pats. See you guys. See you next week.